He had the stats, he had the spotlight. He had Deion Sanders, his father. So what happened? 2025 draft comes around, first round finish.
With the 32nd pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, the Kansas City Chiefs select.
And Shedeur Sanders' name isn't called. Now, there's a lot of controversy, whether it's putting him in his place type of thing, or is he just not that good enough? And granted, this is not my place. I'm not an analyst, but as a sport and performance psychology professional, I figure this is great to break down because there's so many themes going on with Shedeur Sanders. Now, I'm not going to personally say whether I feel he should have been drafted or not, but I want to see different components of his journey to here and how that can make sense and help other people going down this route to understand psychology and getting their mind right. Now, this just isn't about football, because if that was the case, he put up the numbers. He had a great career. Now, people argue whether he played a good enough competition, and I think he did. Now, obviously, the Big 12 schedule is not the same as the SEC, but he definitely had to face some tough opponents, and he showed that he's a very good player. So if I do put any insight on his playing skills, if you go deeper than just the glitz and glamour that most people look of as general watchers of the sport, he's actually a very good player. So I'm not taking that away from him. But what else is at hand? We can talk about confidence. We can talk about ego. We can talk about sport parenting. And we can talk about different biases. Like there's a lot of cognitive biases I see different analysts and fans bring into the light, which may be skewing everyone's perception of whether he should be drafted at which place or is he good enough. So let's get into that first. Now, confidence. This is something that every athlete talks about and is generally looked at as, do you have what it takes in your mind and achieve what you need to achieve? And there's no doubt that you can do it. Now, this is a misconception because confidence is dynamic. In psychology, we describe it more so as something that ebbs and flows. Some days it's up, some days it's down. Because if it was static, that means you're always going to feel like you got what it takes. But no matter how good you are, there's going to be days when you don't have it. That's why we say it's dynamic, because it's not about whether you have it or you don't, but rather, can you turn it on or implement it when it's needed the most? There's going to be games you go into, you don't think you got what it takes, and you feel down, and that's okay. But can you bring yourself back? Or there's going to be games where you feel amazing, and it gets depleted because of some play or something that happened to deter you. So either way you look at it, when it comes to Shedeur Sanders, people got on him because it's flashy, his ego, and I think a lot of that he inherited from his dad, not maybe genetically, but definitely from behavioral, seeing him, because Deion is known for his flashy style, but a lot of people look at it as, do he have the same talent level? Now, they're different positions, so automatically that separates it, but they're also different athletic styles too, so it's apples to oranges when it comes to that. But you can definitely see his dad is a big influence on his behaviors as well as his ability to be a good player. So we can't take that away from him. But a lot of people debate is, are you being overconfident? Because in sport in general, overconfidence is probably worse than low confidence. And I always say this because if you have low confidence and you can acknowledge that, I can help you. I can take you from, okay, we're here. How do we get to here? But if you're overconfident, a lot of times what happens is you don't see your flaws, or if you do see them, you're not going to want to work on them. I work with many athletes who were overconfident and they thought they could just talk their way into a championship or to a great play. And it doesn't work that way. You have to acknowledge where your faults are and then work on those weaknesses and make them better, and then make your strengths more advertisable so people can see them. So maybe that's something he could have did differently in the course to the draft, because he did lean into it. I'm not going to take that away. He leaned into being the best. He was projected top 5 for some draft charts, but obviously he didn't go that way. And then after he didn't get drafted first round, he made a conference at his draft party saying this shouldn't have happened, and we all know this wasn't supposed to be this way. So how he's handling this, almost like a defeat, hey, it's up to him how he bounces back. But this kind of leads into our next point. What even led up to the hype? Now, once again, Deion Sanders has been his coach pretty much his whole life. And this brings up an issue that happens in sport parenting all the time. The coach's son. I've played with many coaches' sons. I've never been one myself, but I've seen how sometimes favoritism happens, or they get more reps in practice, or just overall more opportunities. Not saying they're not deserving of them, but there is some bias. You can't help it. It's your child. No matter how bad your child is, you're going to have some sympathy to make sure they get what they need. But basically, this could be clouded in the judgment of someone who hasn't had a lot of experience with other coaches. Think about, like, say, in college, if you get your bachelor's degree at one university, and then you get your master's at the same university, and you do your PhD at that same university, and then you do your postdoc at that same university. Great that you accomplished all these different feats, but it came from the same place. So you don't have diversity of thinking, which is very important in the development of anyone, let alone an athlete. Now, bringing it back to sport parenting, how do you get a fair, objective reading? Now, granted, I'm sure Deion Sanders wasn't just sitting there saying, my son's good no matter what. He definitely worked hard to get there. I'm not taking that away. He definitely seems like a hard worker, but there's going to be some subjective bias that's going to make him lean a certain way. And he's going to want the best for his son. And that's any parent. I'm a parent. So you're going to want that. But it could skew your judgment. And then you can see how it can inflate his ego going into the draft. And there was some sources that said they didn't like his attitude and it came off too braggadocious. Now, I would argue that that's one side, but that's kind of like confirmation bias, right? Everyone talked about that statement by the anonymous NFL worker. But what about the ones who maybe had good interviews with him? It can't be all bad. So they shouldn't attack the kid. But at the same time, we need to see every side. And I think that's even a better segue. I love talking about cognitive biases. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically when your brain jumps to the quickest solution to think, oh, this is why it's occurring. For example, if I say I found $1 on Tuesday, would I assume that every Tuesday I'm going to find $1? No, that's a bias. It just happened to happen the same day. But we understand that. That's a simple one. But when it comes to something like this, there's a lot of illusory superiority complex with Shedeur because you have to think you're better. We evolved to think we're better. Think about ancient times when we would hunt mastodon and wild game. You had to have the confidence to think you're more skilled to take it down with your spear. It had to be done or you would starve. But guess what? We evolved doing that. But now we're in a more modern world where the challenges aren't as physically exerting. So it's easier to just say, I'm the best driver, the best athlete, the best quarterback, whatever it is. So I'm not mad that he has a little bit of that bias because it is needed to an extent. So I'm okay with that. But I think some of the people who are trying to defend them not getting drafted, they're using some hindsight bias, insert Tom Brady. Now, bringing these two together, I'm not saying Tom Brady, whether or not he endorses him, because I think he does like Shedeur a lot. But I'm talking about how people are saying, well, Brady didn't get drafted first round. He went sixth round, almost at the end of the draft. But he became a champion, Hall of Fame legend for sure. But that's hindsight bias. We've seen what he could do. When he was getting drafted, no one knew that. That's why he went so late. There were 6 people before him. There's a whole documentary called The Brady Six. And people are comparing and contrasting them as far as their abilities and personalities, much different players. And Tom Brady was known for being a workaholic, going into the gym when it was locked, climbing fences, doing more than anyone. He was always on the radar. It wasn't that he wasn't known. It's just that they didn't believe in him for whatever reason back in the 2000 draft. So it's not the same, but we're using hindsight bias, meaning we know what already happened. So we can now say, oh, it's going to happen with Shedeur, but it's different. Tom Brady also, for example, he played a lot of top competition at Michigan. People say, oh, he was Brian Grease's backup. Yes, for a while. Shedeur started his whole career in the college, but he was behind a guy who went to the NFL, whose dad was a Hall of Famer. So it's not like he was just starting behind scrubs. So you got to look at that part too. And also keep this Tom Brady thing going. Tom Brady actually won this bowl game. So it was a lot of things that Tom Brady did that got overshadowed that no one talks about. He was a great player. It's just there were some intangibles that coaches were looking for that they didn't think that Tom Brady had. So this all being put together, the Shedeur Sanders situation, I think he's going to do well in the NFL as long as he keeps working hard. He has the skills and the tools to do it. Don't let it be fooled that all because Deion Sanders hypes him up that he isn't good. And also because he didn't win against every big team, he's bad. That's not what it's about. And going to the same theme of Tom Brady, if you let those things determine his worth, you're going to miss out on a great opportunity. So I wish the young man best of luck. I think he can do well in this league. He just, as anyone, has to work for it and understand. Now, that's a whole different topic. His physical capabilities, I'm sure he'll do fine there, but it's the mental. I know that's cliche. I'm a mental performance coach. My background is in sport and performance psychology. So obviously I'm going to push that, but it's really going to come down to that. And I think that's what he needs the most. So shameless plug, holler at me, Shedeur. If you need some work, I got you on the cognitive mental training, the mindset stuff, the physical mix, mental physicality, all of that. So yeah, I'll put that out there. So tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think that Shedeur has what it takes? Let's have a discussion. And as always, get your mind right.